The music classroom smelled faintly of old wood and polished floors. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, touching the rows of black and white keys that lined the room. It was quiet, except for the occasional squeak of a chair or the soft rustle of sheet music. In the back of the classroom, a young girl slipped in quietly, trying not to draw attention. She carried a small, worn music book under her arm, and a determined look on her face. She had always loved music. Today she was here to try something she had dreamed about for a long time. Most of the students already knew each other. They chatted quietly in groups, laughing softly, sharing their practice stories and comparing the pieces they had been working on. Their teachers had been with them for years, guiding them through notes and rhythms, and everyone seemed confident. The new girl, however, did not have that kind of confidence. She had spent countless hours practicing alone at home on a piano that had outlived its prime. It made strange sounds at times, but it had been her companion through every difficult piece she had attempted. She quietly took a seat in the back corner, hoping to observe and learn before anyone noticed her. She watched the teacher, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a commanding presence, move between the students. The teacher's fingers tapped lightly on the piano keys as she listened to each student play. There was a certain air of seriousness in the room, as if music itself demanded respect and concentration. Some students were nervous, others were confident, but all had a certain familiarity. With the teacher that came from years of lessons, the girl opened her music book and took a deep breath. The pages were full of notes, some scribbled in pencil from her own practice. She ran her fingers lightly over the paper, feeling a connection to the music that went beyond just notes on a page. She had worked tirelessly on Chopin pieces, learning each one in her small room at home. There was a quiet pride in her preparation, but she knew the real test was here, in front of the teacher and the other students. The teacher clapped her hands softly to get the class's attention. "Today," she said, "we are going to try something new. I want someone to attempt a piece by Chopin. Not just any piece, but one that requires control, emotion, and confidence. Who will volunteer?" The classroom went silent. Eyes darted around. Some students whispered to each other, exchanging nervous glances. The new girl's heart pounded in her chest. She had imagined this moment countless times, but the reality was more intimidating than she had expected. She hesitated, unsure if she should raise her hand. Then, with a quiet resolve, she lifted it. Her arm rose slowly, almost tentatively, as if testing the waters of this unfamiliar world. All eyes turned toward her. The teacher paused, looking directly at the girl. There was a flicker of amusement in her eyes, as if she had noticed the tiny hand raised and thought it an amusing mistake. "You?" she asked with a laugh that was soft but carried through the room. "Do you really think you can play Chopin?" The girl swallowed hard but nodded. She did not speak, because words felt unnecessary. Her music would speak for her. Some students giggled quietly, unable to hide their curiosity mixed with doubt. The new girl stood up, holding her book tightly, and walked slowly to the piano. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she held her head high. She knew that this moment was not about proving anyone else wrong. It was about proving to herself that she could do it. When she reached the piano, she set her book on the music stand and took a seat. Her hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly from anticipation. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking a deep breath. Memories of hours spent practicing alone, of the small victories and frustrations, all came rushing back. She thought of every note she had learned, every phrase she had struggled to perfect. This was the culmination of her silent, patient work. The classroom watched in silence. The teacher leaned back slightly, still smiling with skepticism. Some students whispered to one another, unsure what to expect. The new girl opened her eyes and glanced briefly at the sheet music. The first notes were familiar, comforting in their certainty. She pressed her fingers to the keys and began to play. The sound was soft at first, cautious, but even in those first notes there was a clarity and precision that caught the room off guard. Her fingers moved with careful intention, yet with a natural grace that spoke of countless hours of private practice. The music flowed slowly at first, each chord carefully chosen, each note clear and deliberate. The students leaned forward slightly. Even the teacher's smile faltered for a brief second. The replaced by a flicker of curiosity. The girl's playing grew more confident as she continued. She remembered every challenge she had overcome, every mistake she had corrected in the quiet of her own room. There was a subtle intensity in her focus, a quiet determination that made the music feel alive. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if the piano itself demanded attention. She was not performing for applause or recognition. She was performing for herself, allowing her practice and passion to speak without interruption. As she progressed through the opening section, her posture straightened, and her confidence grew. She was no longer the quiet girl in the back of the room. She had become a conduit for the music she loved so deeply. Each phrase was played with intention, each pause with emotion. The teacher's eyes narrowed slightly, observing closely, perhaps beginning to question her earlier assumptions. The students watched in awe, some unable to hide their surprise at the skill and depth of expression coming from someone they had assumed was inexperienced. The girl felt a sense of calm wash over her. All the nerves, all the doubt, melted away as her fingers danced across the keys. She was no longer thinking about the classroom, the teacher's laugh, or the whispers of her peers. She was completely immersed in the music. Each note carried a part of her story, her persistence, her quiet dedication, her love for Chopin's compositions. In that moment, she and the piano became one, connected through the language of music. When she finished the opening section, she allowed herself a brief pause, her hands resting lightly on the keys. The silence in the room was profound. No one moved, no one spoke. The teacher's expression was unreadable, a mixture of surprise and curiosity. The students were frozen in place, their previous skepticism replaced by fascination. The girl's heart pounded, but it was not from fear. It was from the thrill of sharing something she had nurtured in private for so long. She looked up briefly, meeting the eyes of the teacher. There was no defiance, no demand for recognition, just a quiet acknowledgement that she had prepared for this moment, that her music deserved to be heard. The teacher nodded subtly, a gesture that seemed to communicate a mixture of respect and disbelief. The classroom atmosphere had shifted. What had started as amusement was now tinged with anticipation. The girl returned to the music, ready to continue. The opening notes had set the tone, but the real test was ahead. She knew that the more challenging sections would require precision, emotion, and unwavering focus. Her fingers moved confidently, each note flowing naturally into the next. The room, once filled with doubt and laughter, had become a space of concentration and admiration. She was no longer an outsider. She was the center of attention, not through words or showmanship, but through the undeniable power of her music. By the time she reached the midpoint of the piece, even the teacher seemed compelled to lean forward, listening intently. The students, who had been whispering and exchanging skeptical glances, were now silent, captivated by the depth of her performance. Every subtle shift in tempo, every gentle touch of the keys, carried emotion and meaning. The new girl was not just playing notes. She was telling a story, one that resonated with anyone who listened as she played. She felt a sense of pride and validation that she had never experienced before. The hours of private practice, the countless mistakes corrected alone in her room, had led to this moment. She was proving not to the teacher or the students, but to herself. That dedication and passion could manifest in ways that surprise even the most skeptical observers. Her music was her voice, clear and strong. Even without a single word spoken, the opening part of the piece ended, and she allowed herself a moment to breathe. She did not rush, for she knew the next section would be more demanding. The teacher's smile had faded, replaced by a thoughtful expression. The students looked at one another as if sharing an unspoken understanding that they had just witnessed something remarkable. The classroom, once filled with doubt and light laughter, had transformed into a space of respect and anticipation. And in the midst of it all, the girl remained focused. Ready to continue her journey through the music that the girl sat at the piano, her hands poised over the keys, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. The teacher's laugh from earlier still echoed faintly in her mind, but she pushed it aside. She knew that music was her voice, and now it was her chance to speak louder than any doubt or amusement. The room was quiet, every eye on her, waiting for what would happen next. She drew a deep breath, allowing herself to focus completely on the piece in front of her. The first few notes of the next section were slow and deliberate, full of emotion. She remembered every detail she had practiced at home, the timing, the pressure of her fingers, the way each note should flow into the next. The room seemed to disappear around her. She could hear only the piano and the music that had lived inside her for so long. Her fingers moved confidently, tracing the familiar patterns she had learned. Even though the teacher's laughter had been mocking, it fueled her determination rather than discouraging her. The students in the room were beginning to notice the change. The new girl's playing had a clarity and control that none of them expected. Some leaned forward in their chairs, eyes widening as they tried to follow the music. The teacher's smirk had vanished completely, replaced by a look of focused curiosity. She began to wonder how someone so quiet and unassuming could carry so much skill and understanding of Chopin. There was a subtle tension in the air, as though everyone in the room sensed that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The girl continued, her fingers dancing across the keys with growing confidence. Every note carried her emotion, her years of practice, and her love for the music. She allowed herself to feel the piece, letting her body move slightly with the rhythm. Her expression softening as she became fully immersed. She was not just playing notes. She was telling a story, one that spoke of patience, dedication, and quiet strength. The room was captivated. The earlier whispers and laughter replaced by attentive silence. The teacher leaned slightly forward, her arms folded, listening intently. She had expected a clumsy performance, maybe a few mistakes that would give her reason to laugh again. Instead, she was met with precision, emotion, and an unexpected depth of understanding. She felt a flicker of respect, mixed with disbelief. How could someone so young, so quiet, play with such confidence and feeling? The music carried a sense of maturity that was rare in the classroom, and the teacher could not hide her surprise. The girl reached the middle of the section, where the notes became faster and more complex. She adjusted her hands carefully, ensuring each key was struck with accuracy. She had practiced this part countless times at home, correcting every mistake, learning every nuance. Her focus was unwavering, and her fingers moved with a natural ease that came from hours of dedicated practice. The students watched in awe, some exchanging glances, as they tried to understand how someone they barely knew could play with such skill. The room seemed to vibrate with the music. Each note resonated in the wooden floors and walls, filling the space with a sound that was both delicate and powerful. The girl felt herself becoming part of the music, as if her own heartbeat had synchronized with the rhythm of the piece. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the notes guide her hands, trusting her memory and her instincts. The fear she had felt moments ago had vanished, replaced by a calm determination. As she continued, she noticed small changes in the students' expressions. Some had stopped whispering entirely, their eyes fixed on her hands. Others were leaning forward, trying to catch every subtle variation in the melody. Even those who had initially doubted her seemed captivated by the sheer beauty and skill of her playing. The teacher, usually quick to critique, remained silent, her focus entirely on the music. The room had shifted from amusement to admiration, and the girl could feel it in the energy around her. The next part of the piece required delicate phrasing and soft dynamics. She adjusted her touch, pressing lightly on the keys to create a gentle, flowing sound. She remembered the guidance she had read in her music books, and the advice of recording she had studied in her spare time. Every note was intentional, every pause carefully timed. The subtle changes in tempo and volume added depth to the performance, making it more expressive and emotionally engaging. She felt a sense of connection to the music that went beyond technique. It was as if the piano and she were speaking the same language. The students began to understand the depth of her talent. What had started as a performance they expected to be clumsy had turned into something extraordinary. They could see the dedication behind every note, the countless hours spent perfecting her craft in solitude. The girl's focus and emotion were contagious, drawing the room into the music. Even the teacher's initial skepticism had transformed into quiet attention. Her earlier laughter completely forgotten. As the piece progressed, the difficulty increased. Rapid runs, Intricate chords and sudden shifts in dynamics demanded complete concentration. The girl's fingers moved swiftly and accurately, her hands coordinating effortlessly. She had practiced this section tirelessly, breaking it down into smaller parts and mastering each one before combining them. The preparation showed in every movement, every note played with precision and grace. Her body swayed slightly with the rhythm, her expression reflecting the emotion of the music. She was no longer a nervous student. She was a musician fully immersed in her art. The room felt alive with the sound of the piano. The students could sense the passion behind each note, the care and attention she put into the music. They began to realize that talent is not always obvious at first glance, and that dedication and practice can produce remarkable results. Some students exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that they had underestimated her. The teacher, too, was absorbing every detail, her mind reevaluating the assumptions she had made moments earlier. The laughter had no place here. Only respect remained. The girl's confidence continued to grow as she approached the climax of the section. She had anticipated this moment during her practice, knowing exactly how to manage the intensity and technical challenges. Her fingers flew across the keys with precision, each note ringing clearly. She allowed herself to feel the music deeply, letting it guide her performance without hesitation. The students were captivated, unable to tear their eyes away from the piano. The teacher's eyes were wide, her hands resting on the edge of the piano bench. As she absorbed the skill and emotion displayed, as she reached the final measures of the section, she slowed slightly, emphasizing each note with care. The music softened, becoming more introspective, and she played with a tenderness that contrasted with the earlier intensity. She felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had conveyed the emotion and meaning of the piece. The room was silent, the weight of the music lingering in the air. The students and teacher alike were held in awe by the depth of expression and technical mastery she had demonstrated when she finally lifted her hands from the keys. There was a brief pause, as if the room itself was processing what had just occurred. The teacher's expression had shifted completely. The amusement was gone, replaced by a mixture of admiration and surprise. The students were still silent, their eyes fixed on her as they tried to comprehend the performance they had just witnessed. The girl's heart was still pounding, but it was no longer from fear. It was from the exhilaration of having shared her music so fully, of having transformed the teacher's laughter into a moment of quiet triumph. The girl allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She had faced doubt and laughter, and had responded with her talent and dedication. The room had changed because of her performance, and she knew that this was only the beginning. The teacher, finally speaking, asked softly, "Where did you learn to play like that?" The girl's smile remained calm and humble, ready to continue her journey. Knowing that her music had already spoken louder than words ever could, the classroom remained silent, the sound of the girl's fingers lingering in the air even after she had lifted them from the keys. The teacher's eyes were wide, her expression unreadable, a mixture of surprise and disbelief. The students, too, were frozen in place, as if afraid to break the spell that had been cast by the music. The girl sat quietly, her hands resting gently on the piano, her breathing steady but still filled with excitement. She had proven herself capable of the opening sections. But the next part of Chopin's piece was even more demanding, and she knew she had to give it everything she had. She glanced at the sheet music again, her fingers lightly brushing over the notes as if greeting old friends. She could hear the faint whispers of curiosity from some students, but she ignored them. Their doubts no longer mattered. She had been preparing for this moment for years in the quiet of her home, learning to trust her hands, her memory, and her heart. She closed her eyes briefly, letting herself focus entirely on the music that had always been a source of comfort and strength. As she began the next section, the notes were faster, the rhythms more intricate, and the emotions more complex. Her fingers moved with a precision and grace that came from countless hours of practice. She felt the familiar sensation of being completely absorbed in the music, as if nothing else existed. The sound filled the room, vibrant and alive, each note resonating with clarity and purpose. She did not rush, but allowed the music to flow naturally, letting her interpretation shine through. The students watched in awe, their earlier skepticism completely erased. Some leaned forward in their seats, trying to understand how such a quiet girl could command such control and expression. Even the teacher, who had laughed at the thought of her playing Chopin, could not hide her amazement. Her previous assumptions were gone, replaced by a deep respect for the talent and dedication before her. The girl's playing was no longer about proving herself. It was about sharing the music she loved and letting it speak for her. The piece demanded more than technical skill. It required emotion, timing, and an understanding of the story behind the music. The girl's hands moved effortlessly across the keys, conveying the rise and fall of emotion in every phrase. She had practiced this section over and over, breaking it down into small segments, mastering each one before putting them together. Her preparation showed in every detail, every note executed with care and feeling. She felt a sense of freedom as she played. She was no longer constrained by doubt or fear as the music reached a more intense section. Her fingers flew across the keys with speed and accuracy. The complex runs and chords required complete concentration, and she delivered them with ease. She felt a surge of confidence, knowing that every note was the result of her dedication. The students were captivated, some holding their breath as they followed the rapid sequences, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The teacher's expression had softened, her arms resting on the edge of the piano bench, completely absorbed in the performance. The room seemed to hum with the energy of the music. Each note carried meaning, each phrase a story. The girl's connection to the piano was evident in the way she moved, how her hands, arms, and posture conveyed the emotion of the piece. She allowed herself to feel the music fully, letting it guide her performance without hesitation. The silence in the classroom was profound, broken only by the sound of the piano and the occasional subtle movement of the students, leaning in to catch every note as the piece progressed. The girl navigated transitions with skill and sensitivity. Soft passages flowed into louder, more dramatic sections, seamlessly, each contrast adding depth to the performance. Her expression mirrored the music, showing concentration, intensity, and the joy of playing something she loved deeply. She had learned to let go of perfectionism and focus on expression, and it made the music feel alive, captivating everyone in the room. Even students who had doubted her now watched with admiration and quiet respect. The teacher, who had initially been skeptical and even amused, now sat in silent observation. She realized that talent is not always obvious at first glance, and that judgment without understanding can be misleading. She began to see the value of dedication and quiet persistence, qualities that the girl had in abundance. There was a subtle shift in the classroom atmosphere. Laughter and doubt had been replaced by anticipation and awe. The girl's music had changed the energy, commanding attention without a word. The challenging middle section required both technical ability and emotional interpretation. The girl's hands moved with confidence, navigating difficult chord progressions and rapid passages. Each note was precise, each dynamic change intentional. She had spent hours at home perfecting this part, learning how to balance speed with clarity and emotion. Her practice had taught her patience, discipline, and the ability to express feeling through her fingers. The classroom now bore witness to the culmination of those lessons. The impact was undeniable. As she played, she felt a sense of connection to the audience, even though most were silent. The music conveyed what words could not. Her quiet determination, her perseverance, and her love for Chopin were evident in every sound. The students were learning a lesson about judgment, humility, and the power of dedication. They realized that talent often exists in silence, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The teacher's initial laughter had transformed into quiet admiration, a recognition of the girl's skill and commitment. The pace of the piece continued to challenge her, with rapid passages that demanded dexterity and precision. Her fingers moved with fluidity, each note ringing clearly and confidently. She felt a surge of energy as she navigated the difficult section, the culmination of years of practice and determination. The students watched in fascination, unable to look away, captivated by the blend of technical skill and emotional expression. The teacher's eyes followed her every movement, noting the discipline and artistry that she had underestimated. As she neared the end of the middle section, the girl's confidence was at its peak. She had overcome the challenge, navigated the complexities, and conveyed the emotion intended by Chopin. The room seemed to breathe with her, attuned to the nuances of the music. The silence was a testament to the impact of her performance, and the students felt a new sense of respect for someone who had quietly nurtured her talent. The teacher, too, was deeply affected, recognizing the value of patience practice and the courage to perform under scrutiny. Finally, the girl transitioned into a softer, more reflective passage. She adjusted her touch, pressing lightly on the keys to create a gentle, flowing sound. The music became intimate, introspective, and full of emotion. She allowed herself to express vulnerability and depth, connecting with the piece in a profound way. The students were mesmerized, their earlier doubts forgotten, placed by admiration for the artistry and dedication displayed. Even the teacher felt a sense of humility. Realizing that her initial assumptions had been wrong, the girl continued, maintaining control and focus, each note deliberate and expressive. She had mastered the art of letting the music guide her, of allowing her heart to influence her performance. The classroom had become a space of concentration, respect, and awe. With every listener captivated by the quiet power of her playing, she felt a sense of fulfillment and joy, knowing that her hard work and perseverance had led to this moment. The teacher's earlier laughter was now a distant memory, replaced by a recognition of genuine talent and dedication. As the final notes of the section approached, she allowed herself to savor the moment. Her hands moved gracefully, the music flowing naturally and beautifully. The room was silent, the air heavy with appreciation and respect. The students who had initially doubted her now watched in amazement, and the teacher could not hide her admiration. The girl had transformed the atmosphere of the classroom, proving that determination, practice, and passion can overcome doubt and skepticism. When the section ended, she lifted her hands from the keys, taking a moment to breathe. The room remained silent, filled with the lingering resonance of the music. The teacher's expression had changed completely, her eyes reflecting respect, curiosity, and acknowledgement of the girl's skill. The students were still captivated, some whispering quietly to each other about what they had witnessed. The girl's heart was full, not from seeking approval, but from the joy of having shared her music and having it recognized for what it truly was. She had transformed the teacher's laughter into a moment of awe, and in doing so, had claimed her place at the piano with quiet, confidence, and undeniable talent. The girl had reached the most demanding section of the piece, where Chopin's music required not only speed and precision, but also emotion and expression. Her hands moved with practiced grace, navigating the rapid notes and intricate chords with confidence. Every movement seemed effortless, yet each note was deliberate, filled with care and meaning. The classroom was completely silent, the students leaning forward, unable to look away, as if mesmerized by the music that filled the room. The teacher, who had earlier laughed, now watched with her arms folded, her expression unreadable but clearly focused. She could not hide the admiration growing in her chest, though she did not yet allow it to show fully. The girl's performance was beyond expectation. It was as though the music itself had taken over her, and her fingers were merely the medium for its voice. Every phrase was played with intention, and the dynamics shifted seamlessly from soft, gentle notes to strong, powerful chords that resonated through the room. The students began to whisper quietly among themselves, amazed at how someone so quiet and unassuming could command such skill. They had underestimated her at first, assuming that her silence and small presence meant she lacked experience. But her playing told a completely different story. Each note carried emotion, discipline, and years of private practice. Even the teacher's previous doubts seemed trivial in the face of what was unfolding. The girl continued through the section, her eyes occasionally glancing at the sheet music, but mostly trusting her memory and instincts. She had rehearsed this part countless times, breaking it into small pieces and perfecting each one before combining them. The long hours of solitary practice, the moments of frustration and triumph, all culminated in this performance. She felt a deep connection with the music, a bond that transcended the classroom, the teacher's skepticism, and the whispers of her peers. Her fingers moved faster now, keeping pace with the complex runs and intricate fingerings. The piano responded to her touch with clarity, each note ringing true. She felt a rush of excitement and focus, her mind completely in the moment. The music demanded her full attention, and she gave it willingly. The students were spellbound, some holding their breath as they followed the seamless flow of notes. The teacher's eyes never left her hands, noting every detail, every subtle nuance of phrasing and dynamics. The passage became more intense, requiring strength, speed, and precision. The girl played with a fluidity that belied the difficulty of the piece. She had mastered the technical challenges, but it was the emotion in her playing that truly captured the room. The shifts between soft, delicate passages and strong, commanding chords were perfectly balanced. The classroom seemed to vibrate with the energy of the music, and the students were drawn into the story that the piano was telling. The teacher's initial laughter was a distant memory now, replaced by a profound respect for the girl's talent and dedication. She had misjudged her, assuming that her quiet demeanor meant she lacked skill. The girl's performance had proven otherwise, and the teacher felt a mixture of humility and admiration. It was a lesson in never underestimating someone based on appearances, a reminder that true talent often resides in unexpected places. The girl played on, her hands moving effortlessly over the keys, her fingers striking each note with precision and emotion. She felt a sense of freedom and confidence, knowing that she had prepared for this moment and was executing it perfectly. The students were completely absorbed, some closing their eyes to focus on the music, others leaning forward to catch every subtle detail. The teacher's posture had changed as well. She sat straighter, her attention fully on the performance, and her expression softened with appreciation. As the piece approached the climax, the intensity increased. Rapid sequences of notes demanded complete concentration, and the girl delivered them flawlessly. Her fingers moved like a dance, balancing speed and accuracy with expression and emotion. The room seemed to hold its breath, each listener aware of the skill and dedication on display. The teacher's admiration was now clear, though unspoken, and the students were witnessing something truly remarkable. The girl allowed herself to feel the music fully, letting it guide her interpretation. She was not performing for approval or recognition. She was performing because she loved the music and had a story to tell through it. Each note, each phrase, carried a part of her journey. The hours of practice, the moments of doubt, the determination to master something difficult. The music was her voice, louder and more powerful than words could ever be. The students began to understand the depth of her talent. They realized that skill and dedication often exist quietly, without fanfare or announcement, and that it takes courage to share that talent with the world. The teacher, too, was learning an important lesson about humility and the importance of giving every student a fair chance. Her initial assumptions had been wrong. She now recognized the remarkable ability and artistry before her. The girl moved into a softer, more reflective section of the piece. She adjusted her touch, playing lightly, allowing the notes to flow gently and gracefully. The contrast between the intense, powerful sections and the delicate, intimate passages showcased her understanding of Chopin's music and her ability to convey emotion through her playing. The students were captivated, some visibly moved by the beauty and expressiveness of the performance. Even the teacher felt a quiet sense of awe. Realizing that her earlier laughter had been misplaced, she continued with confidence, her hands moving with both strength and delicacy. Each note was deliberate, each phrase carefully shaped. The classroom was filled with a sense of reverence, as if everyone present recognized that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The students' admiration grew, and even the teacher found herself silently applauding in her mind for the skill, dedication, and artistry displayed. As the final measures of the section approached, the girl's playing became more controlled and expressive. She allowed the music to speak fully, conveying both technical mastery and deep emotion. The room was completely silent, the only sound being the piano and the subtle resonance of the notes in the space. The students were captivated, and the teacher's expression reflected a mixture of pride and respect. The girl's quiet determination and love for music had transformed the atmosphere of the classroom. When the final note faded, there was a brief moment of silence. The weight of the performance hung in the air, and the impact was clear. The teacher stood slowly, her expression softening, and she approached the girl. The students began to clap, first softly, then more enthusiastically, their admiration and appreciation evident. The girl smiled gently, acknowledging the applause without seeking it. She had played from her heart, and the recognition was a natural consequence. The teacher knelt slightly to the girl's level, looking her in the eyes. "I underestimated you," she said quietly. "Your playing. It is beyond anything I expected. Where did you learn to play like that?" The girl's smile remained calm and humble. She replied simply, "At home, practicing every day. I just love the music." The teacher nodded, a mixture of admiration and understanding in her gaze. The classroom had transformed. Laughter and doubt had been replaced by respect, recognition, and inspiration. The girl had shown everyone that talent, dedication, and quiet determination could overcome skepticism, and in doing so, she had earned their admiration and respect. The last section of the piece was approaching, and the girl felt a mixture of calm and exhilaration. She had navigated the difficult middle sections with skill, emotion, and confidence, and now she knew that the finale would be her chance to leave a lasting impression. She took a deep breath, letting the music guide her, and placed her hands gently on the keys. The classroom was quiet, the students leaning forward, eager to hear the conclusion of a performance that had already changed their perception of what talent could be. The teacher watched closely, her arms crossed, but there was a softness in her expression now. She could no longer dismiss the girl as inexperienced or unskilled. Every note that followed proved that her initial laughter had been misplaced. The girl's fingers moved with a precision and grace that spoke of years of patient practice. Each chord, each run, was executed flawlessly, and the music carried a depth of emotion that held everyone's attention completely. The students were captivated. Some had wide eyes, unable to look away, while others leaned back, letting the sound of the piano wash over them. The girl's playing was not just technically perfect. It was expressive and alive, communicating the emotion and story behind each phrase. The silence in the room was filled only by the music, creating a shared experience that connected everyone present. The teacher, too, was deeply absorbed, recognizing the artistry and dedication that had gone into every note. As she progressed through the final section, the tempo increased slightly, demanding both agility and control. Her hands moved fluidly, striking the keys with accuracy and emotion. The music soared, conveying both triumph and delicacy in equal measure. She was fully immersed, not thinking about the audience or the teacher's gaze, but allowing the music to flow naturally through her. Her years of private practice, the countless hours spent perfecting each passage, had prepared her for this moment, and she was ready to give her all. The classroom seemed to hold its breath. Every listener was aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The students, who had initially doubted her, were now filled with admiration and respect. They could see the effort, dedication, and passion behind each note. Even the teacher, who had laughed moments ago, now observed in awe, realizing the depth of talent and perseverance in front of her. It was a lesson in humility, patience, and the power of quiet determination. The music moved seamlessly through intricate runs and delicate chords, each phrase building toward the finale. The girl's hands moved with confidence and fluidity, navigating the challenges with skill. She allowed herself to feel the music, to express its emotion fully, and to let it guide her performance. Every subtle change in dynamics, every carefully timed pause, added depth and meaning. The students were silent, some visibly moved, others transfixed by the beauty and precision of the playing. The teacher's expression reflected a mixture of pride and realization, acknowledging the girl's extraordinary ability. As the piece reached its climax, the intensity increased. The girl's fingers flew over the keys with remarkable control, each note ringing clearly and beautifully. The music carried a sense of triumph and fulfillment, reflecting both the challenges she had overcome and the skill she had developed. The classroom was alive with the energy of the performance, and every listener felt the impact of her dedication and artistry. The teacher's earlier laughter had been completely replaced by admiration and respect.